first of 2 videos on symbolic interaction and the dramaturgical approach. Now, the plan here is I'm going to briefly introduce you to Erving Goffman. You don't need to remember who he is. The key thing is thinking about the ideas that he presented us with, and that's symbolic interaction. So I'm going to record one short video introducing his ideas on symbolic interaction, and then there will be a second follow-up video that outlines the dramaturgical model, which is a way he presented us of thinking about symbolic interaction. Now, these 2 videos are particularly important. These might be videos that you watch more than once. The reason for that is these are going to provide the basis for other assignments. Most immediately, this is going to be the basis for the photo essay assignment. You have to draw on this idea of symbolic interaction for that photo essay assignment. It might be possible to do it without doing so, but it's going to make things a little bit more complicated for yourself. I recommend not doing that. The second thing is, it might provide the basis for the sociological autobiography. Doesn't have to. There's lots of options you have for how you're going to make connections to your own life experience. A lot of people go with this approach because it makes sense, right? So that's something to consider, especially if you want to get your photo or your sociological autobiography done earlier rather than later in the semester, because that is an option. All right, now remember, I think the second week of class, I had a short video that I shared with you that I recorded on the 3 dominant approaches within sociology: functionalism, conflict theory, and symbolic interaction. Then there's also these more recent approaches: network theory, feminist theory, postmodern theory, and critical race theory, and they can be combined with the 3 dominant ones. But the key thing here is we're about to go into more depth related to symbolic interaction, that third approach. So again, functionalism, focusing on the way that society links together, thinking of society as this body where each part plays a different role. We've got conflict theory, which is all about power and inequality, right? Who has power, who doesn't? How does that lead to tension? How do those in power try to retain power? How do those who do not have power potentially try to get access to it? We're going to focus on symbolic interaction. Now, none of these are completely separate from each other. You can combine them, but they each offer a different focus, a different way of asking questions. With symbolic interaction, the focus is going to be on how people build meaning about the world, how we begin to understand what's around us, right? How we exchange symbols that communicate who we are to other people, even if they don't have a more depth understanding of what's beyond the surface, right? Now, this changes between societies, it changes between groups, but it always relies on this idea that identity is relational. Our understanding of the world is shaped by our interactions with other people, shaped by the group that we're part of. We would not talk the same if we were part of a different group. We would not dress the same if we were part of a different group. We would not think the same if we were part of a different group, right? We're affected by our surroundings. So the person or the approach to symbolic interaction that I'm going to introduce you to, and there are other approaches, but one of the foremost figures is this guy, Erving Goffman. Now, he wrote about a number of different things. We're going to focus on the first book. One of the readings that you have for this week is an excerpt from that book. This is where he begins to give attention to all those ordinary things that we do in our life, right? This is stuff sociologists often would focus on, these more dramatic events, these more impactful moments of revolution, focus on the workplace, focus on religion, all these different types of places. Goffman said we have to look at ordinary life and see how we present ourselves in it, hence the title, and what that actually teaches us about the groups that we're part of, right? How those ordinary, mundane interactions are so essential. He had a number, in the short time that he was alive, he had a number of influential books. So The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life is one of these sociological classics, but so are the other 2 books he wrote, Asylums and Stigma. In Asylums, it was one of the first sociological examinations of the social situation of mental patients. Or in other words, he did a study of psychiatric hospitals. And what he did is he introduced the idea of total institutions. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth of this, but it can influence the way you're thinking about something, even like college, right? This idea of the total institution is an institution where people are all treated alike and behavior is regulated. And as you would see if you read this book, and some people in the class have actually had go and seek out this book and read it because it sounds so interesting, and it is something you could read and enjoy, total institutions have a big impact on the interaction of people. Yet even in these societies, these incredibly regulated societies, people always find a way to redefine and basically reestablish their roles, to break through and reveal their own personalities. But it's always shaped by the institution that they're part of. In Stigma, what he does is he examines how people manage impressions of themselves when in some way they've deviated from the standard behavior or appearance that protects their identities. So people who carry some sort of a negative association with them, right? That's what stigma is, something that sticks to you and you're judged as being an outsider in some way. People feel shame as a result of how people treat them, even though it's not necessarily their fault. Something gets attached to them. How do they respond to that? And I've had a lot of social workers who have told me that these two books are their favorite books. This is what's influenced them as they go forth in their jobs. And even all those social work classes that they take, these are the things that they return to. Goffman's basic understanding of how mental patients are treated, and then what happens when people have stigma attached to them. All right, we're going to focus on, again, symbolic interaction, the study of everyday life. This is an example of micro-sociology. In one of the earlier videos and in the chapter that you read, sociology can operate at 3 levels. Macro, which is this giant, grand approach. Meso, which is the medium level. And then micro, which is the most specific. Focus on what people actually do and how they interact with each other. That's where symbolic interaction takes place. Now, Goffman presents us with 2 different ways of looking at this. The first is this idea of face work or impression management. That's what I'm going to talk about in this lecture. And then the supplemental video that I'm going to record is going to talk about his idea of the dramaturgical approach. They both do the exact same thing. They're interchangeable. They can be combined. But he just gives us a different set of terminology to help us kind of help focus our attention to the world. All right. Let's start with face work or impression management. This is a group of techniques used to sustain a desired impression on others. In a sense, what we are trying to do is present our face to other people. By face, as you'll see in the reading, what Goffman means is the positive social value a person effectively claims for themselves. Right? In a sense, it's basically the image that we're choosing that fits approved social qualities. We're saying these are our positive characteristics, and now I'm going to convince other people that I actually have them, right? This happens during our interactions. I have these positive views of myself. I'm going to convince you that you should see me this way. I am presenting my face to you. The face is not a permanent quality. It changes based on the situation, right? I could claim the wrong positives at the wrong time, and they don't make sense, right? In some situations, me being incredibly fast would be the face that I want to present. Oh, I'm fast and athletic and agile. That's what I want to convince you of. That doesn't make sense in the middle of class. Say I'm teaching a class, and all of a sudden the face I'm trying to convince you of is, hey, everyone, I'm really fast. Did you know that? And I start running sprints back and forth in front of the room. That has no value. I'm claiming the wrong face, right? Instead, what I want to convince you in the class is maybe that I'm intelligent, maybe that I'm empathetic, maybe that I understand what it's like to be a student. Those are positive characteristics I'm claiming for myself. It matters based on the situation. Then I have to maintain that face, right? If I want to present to you that I'm smart, then I have to consistently show that. And there's times where I might lose face. I don't know how to spell something. I explain a concept wrong, and you look it up on Wikipedia and you realize I was completely off. Right? Those are examples of losing face. Those positive qualities slip away. In every situation, we are either taking a line or accepting a line. What that means is this experience is relational. I am presenting something to you, right? Based on the thing that I want you to believe. I'm presenting an image, and then you get to accept my performance or not, right? There are a limited number of lines that I could present in a situation. It depends on where I am, the context, right? There's a limit on what I could actually present. And then there's a limit on how much you'll actually believe it, right? So different situations, different lines I'm going to present. Say you're going out on a first date with someone. It's a romantic date. You're going out for the first time with them. You are going to choose how you want to present yourself to them. You are, in a sense, going to choose the line that you are going to take. It could be a wide variety of things, but you can't show everything about yourself in that situation. Maybe you want to present yourself as someone who's really funny. Maybe you want to present yourself as someone who really cares about politics. Maybe you want to present yourself as someone who really knows a lot about music, or a lot about sports, or a lot about movies, right? Those are different cultural scripts or lines you can take. You are going to try to convince them of that thing, and it will be more or less convincing. Maybe they believe you or not. We all know what it's like when we're trying to convince someone of something and that it's just not working, right? So you're taking a line and they either accept it or they don't, right? That's what you do. You engage in this role-playing activity. This is who I am. Here's my line that I'm throwing out into the world. And sometimes it breaks down and sometimes it doesn't. Actually, going back to the one for a second, think of it. Another example would be you arrive in class on the very first day. You have to choose, how are you going to present yourself, right? What's the line that you want to present? As a student, it's not that important to convince me that you are someone who's cool and fun to be around. That's a line you might take in other places on campus, right? But here you probably want to take a line sitting in that class that you're someone who cares about the class and that you're studious and intelligent. You're trying to convince me of that, right? Now the question is that sincere or cynical? We're always playing a role. Sincere does not mean that it's 100% true, but it means that you believe it. Cynical doesn't mean it's 100% lie. It means that you don't believe the role that you're playing, right? And often we fall somewhere in between. Even a good student knows that they're not 100% committed to a course. That's incredibly rare. But you go to the class and you want to present yourself as being a good student. If you are a good student and you're doing the reading, that's a pretty sincere performance. However, if you're someone who's just been out partying a lot, you haven't been doing the reading, or you're staying up late playing video games, you don't really care about the class, you still want to present yourself as caring someone about the class. Maybe you bring your book, right? But then I ask you to get out the reading and you get out the wrong book, right? That would be an example of losing face. You're trying to present this positive version of yourself, but it breaks down. So you're always somewhere between sincere and cynical. Now, one of the things that's interesting is, and I think this is a wonderful point that he makes, as we repeat a performance, even if it starts out as cynical, as we do it over and over, it starts to be sincere. The first time anyone ever teaches a class, the first time I taught a class, I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome. I was in front of a bunch of students, and I was like, am I really an expert on this thing, right? The more times I teach, I start to believe it more and more. Oh, I actually do belong here. I should be in front of the class. I should be the person that they're listening to. It moves from a cynical performance where I have to present confidence even though I don't have it, and then slowly it becomes real. Suddenly it becomes sincere. If you think about the role of a prank, the role of a prank is often to break people out of their face, to break people from the line that they're taking, right? You surprise someone in a way that's unexpected and you see how they respond. And they often do in a way that's actually more honest to themselves, and then they have to recover, right? It's the person who acts really tough and not scared of anything. You have a prank where like a monster jumps out of the dark, they scream, they call for their mom to help them, and then they have to recover their face, right? A prank breaks you out of that setting. So hopefully you're getting these ideas of face and then this idea of taking a line. The other thing you could think about is as you take these lines, as you present your face, you are making a choice, right? Every time you choose to wear something, every time you go to a restaurant with other people and choose to order something, every time you choose to put the music on, it could be more sincere. It's actually what you want to eat. It's what you want to listen to. It's what you want to wear. Or maybe it's cynical and that you're saying, I am putting the clothing on that I think other people will think is cool, that other people will find me attractive in, that other people would think it's appropriate for me to wear. So one of the things I would like you to do, and I'm not going to stop the video for this to happen, is just think a little bit about a time where you've been in a situation where you've made a choice. And literally, you're doing this throughout the whole day. So you make a choice to convey something about yourself. What was that choice? What were you trying to convey, and how did you make that choice? You were in the group setting and people said, hey, put some music on. You didn't just choose necessarily what you wanted to hear, but you chose what you wanted other people to think you wanted to hear, right? How did you make that choice? What did you choose? Why? All right, so think a little bit about that, but I'm going on. Other thing to think about is this relates to our feelings. What I mean by that is it feels good when the face work goes well. It feels good when you put a line out there and you can tell other people are accepting it. We are social creatures. It feels good to be part of a group or a field. It feels good to have a sense of belonging. I meet a new group of people. I'm trying to present myself as someone funny. I make a joke. Everyone laughs. That feels great, right? And then later on, someone even references that joke again. That's me putting out a line and it being accepted. I'm in a new group and I try to present myself as someone who knows about food, right? And I say something about food, and later on someone's like mentions again, like, oh, what do you think of this, right? The line has been taken. It feels bad when it doesn't. It feels bad when our face work breaks down. It feels bad when we try to present ourselves as someone or some quality about ourselves and people don't believe it, or it doesn't work. Something goes wrong. We get a feeling of shame, right? Shame is often the experience of you do something embarrassing and you know that other people in the group noticed it, right? This is one of the reasons that being part of a group is not just to maintain your face, but it's to help other people maintain their faces. Even if you know they're being a bit on the cynical side in that presentation. You have that friend who's really shy and nervous and trying to present an image of themselves. You don't break it down and tell an embarrassing story about them. You actually support them in that case, right? You allow the line to be taken and you don't call it into question. This is an acceptance, right? You're helping them build acceptance. That's the basis for social interaction. And we've all been around people who are kind of jerks and mean, and they just keep breaking down other people's faces. They keep on destroying their lines. The other thing that I find really useful from Goffman is he reminds us that we're always engaged in misrepresentation. All performances require a little bit of duping on the part of the performer. He says instead of merely doing his task and giving vent to his feelings, he will express the doing of his task and acceptably convey his feelings. In general, then, the representation of an activity will vary in some degree from the activity itself and therefore inevitably will misrepresent it. In a sense, we always want this. It's not necessarily bad. Misrepresentation could be barefaced lies, they could be white lies, they could be a crucial omission. But they're all designed to maintain an oppression and facilitate smooth interaction. If you go to a mechanic, you don't want the mechanic to actually reveal that they don't know at all what's wrong with your car and don't really know what's going on. They give you a sense of confidence. When you go to the professor, you want them to convey some of their feelings, but you also want them to hide some of them, right? You don't want someone to reveal everything. That's if you ask someone how they're doing, a random stranger, you're basically asking them to, not a stranger, but someone you're passing by, you're asking them to engage in a little bit of face work and misrepresentation. They'd probably just say good. No one's doing perfectly good, right? There's always problems. There's things that are better or worse. You don't want all that information. You just want them to keep going with the social interaction. The other thing that you can think about, and this is a really important as we try to understand what face work is or what symbolic interaction is that in a sense, what we're trying to understand as sociologists are the traffic laws of social interaction. This is how Goffman describes them. It's not about learning why each individual person is doing something. We're not trying to learn the motivations of each individual actor in the group. Instead, we're trying to learn why people in that group as a whole generally follow these rules. Why does one person choose a certain pair of shoes, but why does everyone in that group kind of wear those type of shoes, listen to that type of music? Why does every student sit the same way in class? Not each individual variation, but you're learning something larger. And in a sense, if you listen to an individual tell you why they did something, they're actually teaching you about the rules of the group. As sociologists, we care about the individual as a way of understanding the larger group, and we understand the group as something that influences the individual. Now, of course, these laws, as I mentioned before, these traffic rules, they vary across people, across subcultures, across societies. They all have different approaches to considering what is positive, what's not. Next thing to think about, what happens when something actually does go wrong? So I've hinted at it before, but we do, as Goffman would describe it, lose face, right? You're walking down the street, you have your I think that's Dunkin' Donuts coffee that you've just bought. It's a icy day in the middle of January. You're just lost in your own thoughts and you slip and fall and you lose your drink. And you can think about this. We've all had a situation like this, whether we've fallen or something else happened. We've all had a situation like this and think, what is it that you want other people to do around you? Now, it's different. If you break your leg, obviously, then you want people to help you. If you haven't broken your leg, you actually don't want people to come up and say, oh, are you okay? which is a really nice thing for someone to do. But at that moment, you hate it, right? The thing you want them to do is just act like nothing happened so you can go on with your day. So you can clean yourself up and get home and change your clothing and just be annoyed at the world, but act like no one else really noticed. That is option one, civil inattention. You see something go wrong and you ignore it. You allow those people who have lost face to act like they have not lost face, right? You're in class and you fall asleep. The professor doesn't call on you. They just let it be. You know that they saw, but just let it go on. Nothing has to stop. You're in a social setting and you fart, right? It's an embarrassing thing, but we all know that this happens to humans, and you don't want people to call attention to it. You really just want everyone to act like nothing happened. You know that people heard you, right? You're worried that people smell this thing that occurred, but you avoid it, right? You're just hoping that civil inattention will allow it to go forward. All right, so option one is civil inattention. Option 1A, which is like civil inattention, is diversion through a joke, right? This is also a way of saving face. Instead of just ignoring it, you just someone makes a joke and everyone can laugh and move on. Someone makes a joke about slipping on the ice, right? Everyone laughs. Someone makes a joke about farting. Everyone laughs. It goes on. It's a way of being like, all right, who cares? It's something that happened. So in a sense, he's laying the traffic rules for what happens when something goes wrong. Option one, we ignore it. Option two, make a joke or divert attention to someone else or to somewhere else. Option three, the correction. This is if the mistake is something that is unavoidable, right? So something happens, there's a loss of face or a threat to someone's face. The first thing that happens is there's a challenge. So there's attention called to the problem. What would be an example of this? You're at a restaurant, and you order chicken, and the server brings you lasagna. You do not like lasagna, so you can't simply, right? Option one would have been simply civil intention. You're like, all right, well, I ordered chicken. I'll take lasagna because I like lasagna too. I'll eat it. No big deal. I don't have to make it awkward for anyone. I don't want to make it awkward for the people I'm eating with. I don't want to make it awkward for the restaurant or the server. But it turns out you don't like lasagna, so you need to call attention to the problem. So the challenge is when the server comes over, says, how is everything? You say, oh, you actually brought me the wrong dish. I ordered chicken. You brought me lasagna. Next step is the offering. The person who lost face, the server lost face, right? They made a mistake. The person who made a mistake makes an offering. In this case, it might be, hey, let me rush back and get you some chicken, and I'll put you first in line. So that's an offering, right? The person's putting something forward. Option three, you either accept the offering or you can say no. Accepting the offering would be say, that's really wonderful of you. I would love to have that chicken. I appreciate it. Server does that, acknowledges that you accept the offering. Oh, thank you for being so great about just accepting. It's my mistake. Everyone's fine. We move on. You could say no. The person offers to get you chicken. You say, I'm running late. This is really annoying. I want a free meal, right? That would be not accepting the offering. Now the server has to go down that line again of offering another offering, and you either accept it or you don't. So you can see how this works back and forth before we can move on. Because the whole goal in social interactions is to get to that point where everyone maintains face and moves forward. There were a whole line of sociologists through the 60s and 70s and 80s, could be even something you do for the photo essay, where they would intentionally break social norms, right? They would do it in different settings, and they would see how people responded. Did they engage in civil attention? Did they engage in diversion? Was there an attempt of correction, right? If you get into an elevator and face the wrong way, does someone correct you? Do they ignore you? Do they make a joke about it, right? How do we respond when people just break these social norms? What's key here again is this is all relational, like I was saying. It's all about cooperation. When it goes well, it's a good day. When it goes wrong, it can ruin your day. The smallest thing, right? When you lose face, it can ruin your whole day. Goffman himself describes it as, he says, this is the very end of the essay that I had you read, a person's performance of face work, extended by his tacit agreement to help others perform theirs, represents his willingness to abide by the ground rules of social interaction. Here is the hallmark of his socialization as an interactant. Basically, he's saying the unspoken agreement to help others keep their positive versions of themselves. to interact in a way where we put forth lines and other people accept it, that's the basis for all social interaction. That's the foundation for society. This is that micro level that everything else is built up on top of. All right, so that's the idea of face work. That's the idea of taking a line. These are things you are going to think about in your photo essays. So take a little break after watching this video, and then I recommend looking at video 2. So again, 2 different things related to each other. So we've got face work and taking a line here, and then in the next video, we're going to talk about the dramaturgical model.